And welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two friends may or may not be living their best lives. We
We
routinely
do what we
listen
want.
when we want, how we want, and they probably include gorging history memes like we are a famished vampire and then trying to learn the story behind
Facts.
him. But I'm host number one. I'm Theresa.
I'm host number two, and I'm still Angie.
Dun dun
I say
dun.
that I say that like I'm gonna change that. That's not gonna happen. That's my name.
I mean,
You know.
maybe you want to be
I mean,
Frangipani.
unless you're gonna call me Your Highness or Empress or Milady, whatever. I'll take any of those.
Malady?
Milady, not
I
Malady.
prefer Malady. It's close enough.
To you, I'll be a Malady.
You always are. Um,
You're, I send my love. Aw.
hmm. Well, I know we did Stonewall, and I took us on a merry jaunt through the whole thing, and then I
I,
stole the entire
oh,
time.
I need you to understand that, quite frankly, there is nothing that can top the love I have for Stonewall right now. Like, we left our recording, and I immediately went to my husband and was like, "Did you know?" And it's gonna be time before I come up with something as awesome as a queer kick line.
I mean, everything about Stonewall is like, but wait, there's more.
For 9.99, we have another story.
Yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
I'm kind of. So, with that being said, my story does not involve a riot, sadly, or an uprising, if you will.
That's,
Um,
that's fine. I know my place. I know what I'm bringing, and I try to be consistent.
yeah, I mean,
Riots, flinging dead bodies because of laying siege, like terrare.
these are things. Oh, you know, Stonewall got the bad taste of Charare out of my mouth, and here you are, just putting it right back in. You know, you're nothing if not consistent. So,
Hmm.
you know,
Hmm.
I'll give you that. Um, I am bringing a story to you today that I hope you don't know, nor do I hope you know the name right off the bat, because I think that will be really fun if you don't. Um, but as I was thinking about this, it occurred to me that the other day that is celebrated in the month of June is Father's Day. And we just celebrated that. And so I was thinking, most of our stories don't include great dads. Like, have you ever noticed that? If
I mean,
if they're slightly unhinged, there's not a great dad involved, yeah?
it's because the person involved has to develop some grit, and you get that grit
Hmm.
by a authoritarian figure forcing you to rub some dirt on it and walk it off.
I
Like,
mean, yeah.
if they're not telling you to go play in traffic, you're not going
Are
to
they
end up,
even dadding it up?
I seriously. And if they're going to coddle you and take you to the father-daughter dance, like they're they're going to end up being a well-rounded individual that just doesn't make the history books.
I mean, right? Except for in this case. Um, so with that being said, I'm going first, neener, neener, neener. Like you didn't already say that, but
If it makes you feel like you have agency, sure, I'll
thank
let
you.
it. I'll let it
Thank you so
happen.
much.
You're welcome. I'm a giver.
So, oh, you're such a giver. Um, my sources, like Father, like Offspring, American Battlefield Trust, battlefields.org, Emerging Civil War. So that's the just it's civilwar.com. It's just there. It's a fun little jaunt through that. The Clara Barton Birthplace Museum
Hmm.
and history.com. Are you familiar with Clara Barton?
Yeah, she started the Red Cross.
Okay. So do you know the story of like how we got there?
I know I've researched it. I know that I knew it. Do I know it now? Because you're asking? No. No, but as soon as we pause and you like, like you and I like aren't recording, I'm going to be a wealth of information. But, these are things.
Oh, I love this for me. Well, I'm gonna start with her dad. Anyways, so ha, because he's a pretty cool chap. Captain Stephen Barton. He's born in 1774, so he's growing up in the middle of the American Revolution and the rebirth of our country as its own nation. So he's seen a lot. He would fight in the Indian Wars in the Northwestern Territory, which would be like Ohio and Michigan at this point. He is the captain of his local militia. So when he returns home from the wars, he heads back to Massachusetts and he takes up farming. He's also occasionally very active in the local government. He's serving as a selectman, which I was unfamiliar with that term before
Select
looking
man.
into this. Selectman, Selectmen, and it's basically a member of a board of officials that are elected in towns of the New England states, not including Rhode Island. I don't know why that matters, but Rhode Island is not involved in this process.
Nor do they
They
want to be.
basically,
Keep their name out of your mouth.
yeah, do you, Rhode Island. They serve as the chief administrators and authority of the town, and they basically have overall responsibility for the general operations of town government. So like the equivalent of a board of supervisors, maybe? I don't know. I don't think I know enough about a board of supervisors, but that's kind of the gist I was getting.
Okay. I mean, I don't feel like I know enough about
Okay.
city governments in general now that you were talking about it.
Right? Like all of a sudden I'm like, huh, I
Like the
guess I need to
mayor
go to a
doesn't do
council meeting
everything?
so I understand. Only if they're a monkey. I mean,
Angus. Angus.
we love you. So, Captain Stephen, he's known as a generous man. He loves to help those that are less fortunate in his community, and it's pretty clear he adores his children. He would regale his youngest daughter and her four siblings with war stories full of patriotism, and good old-fashioned soldiering. Not only that, but he was also like he delighted them with lessons in quote geography, military tactics, and the significance of equipping an army with arms, food, clothing, and medical supplies. So like from a young age, he's he's teaching them how to run a militia. But he's doing it in story and play and things like that.
How to
So
learn
all of these
everything.
things.
We set up lemonade stands. They did troop movement.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what he's got going on. Okay, so all of these little things, they're kind of adding up in little Claire's mind, and her relationship with her father and his willingness to not only teach, but talk with his children lays the foundation that Claire's going to work on the rest of her life. So, excuse me, Clara, I keep wanting to say Claire, and I cannot make my brain swap. Her name is Clara. Clara. You feel free to
And she's not the first
beat
Clara.
me
We
with a
had
stick.
we had Clara the Rhino.
I know, and I still want to say Claire. I don't know why. Beat me with a stick when I say it wrong, okay? Like, just point it out. She's born on Christmas Day in 1821. Like I mentioned, she is the youngest of five, which is a lot to us today, but probably a little to them.
Well, I mean,
So
you
there's that.
you got to imagine three are going to die in early childhood, and then one might be a crook.
Wildly, all five of their children make it to adulthood. Isn't that nuts?
And they're all girls?
No, three girls, two boys.
Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, there's this family, they're really interesting to me because first of all, we have information on each family member, and it seems that that information, I don't want to say it came straight from Claire, but it is Clara, but it is, you get the feeling that it's relayed that way. Like this brother did this for me, this sister did this for me, this sibling taught me this. And each member of her family is crucial to her upbringing. One teaches makes sure she learns the reading, one teaches her how to ride, and they remain a close-knit family throughout their time. It is worth noting, though, that her mother, Sarah, was known to be rather independent. She was super thrifty, maybe a little eccentric, and she did not have the best temper. So,
I feel called out.
I think that you should just take a bow. Um and I will say that I think your temper was is probably significantly better than Miss Sarah's temper. Um, Needless to say, Clara grows up playing war games and having mock battles on the family farm. In fact, her father once said, quote, "You are more boy than the boys." And I feel like this gives us a real picture of her early life and just how important her dad was to her personality and to her upbringing because he didn't we often see where education changes from child to child based on their gender, and the little girls aren't allowed to go play in the fields, and they're not allowed to do the boy things. They all did the thing. Like across the board, they were taught the same, they are raised the same, and I'm here for this. Now, I do see that in a lot of our stories, the dads are great at educating their daughters like the boys, so that is worth also mentioning. That is not common, I don't think. But in our stories, our unhinged women are often educated by their
Hmm.
fathers.
You're not
So
wrong. You're not
good on
wrong.
them, right? So right about this time, she's 11, it's 1833, and here's where her life takes kind of an interesting turn. Her older brother, Captain David Barton, is seriously injured during a barn raising accident. And honest to God, that sentence might be my favorite sentence because no order of those words made sense to me. Seriously injured during a barn raising accident. He
I
fell from
mean,
the rafters.
that does seem like a very old-timey thing. That was probably on
Right?
more death certificates than we'd like to imagine. But
And that's what
now
I thought.
we don't have too many of those.
You don't hear about it often, which is why I think it was just like so what? To my brain. My brain was like, no, 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 no. Something else happened. So Clara immediately begins acting as his nurse during his recovery. She administers medicine. She even applies and removes the leeches as instructed by the doctor,
Do you know they still use leeches?
which I think is absolutely wild. But yeah, that's nuts to me. So this care goes on for 2 years. So for 2 years, she stays at home and cares for him. And then all of a sudden, after the 2 years, the family reaches out to what is called a steam doctor who
Steam,
treats
as in
David with
steampunk?
that's the
Okay.
visual I got, but think steam as in it came from the bathtub steam
Okay.
because he treats David with vapor baths.
This sounds like a hoax. Like this sounds like
I
some good old snake oil.
That's what I thought too, except for all of the sudden within 3 weeks he's cured of his problems. So here you go. Unclear why it worked. I don't know what was in the vapor baths, but like could we find that information out? Was it
Vicks
just
vapor
onion
rub,
soup?
some
Like
menthol.
yeah. What we don't know is the doctor is Dr. Vic himself.
Yeah,
Um
right?
right? So, as she ages, she does not marry, but she instead pursues her education as both a teacher and an educator. She becomes a teacher at age 17. Did you know that?
I didn't
To
know
me,
that.
that seems so young
This is
today, right? But back
this is
then, that
like
makes
your
so much
girl,
sense.
your Chinese Amelia Earhart getting 12 hours of flight lessons and thinking it's time to go out on her own, and me going like,
Yes.
good. First off, let me just say good
Do you
for
even have
you.
your driver's
Second,
license?
second, that's not enough. That's not, I mean, I know it's enough for them. It's not enough. It's not enough.
It's not enough, but here's the thing. She is a phenomenal teacher, and she teaches locally for about 12 years. And it said that she had this way of engaging the students that the students just absorbed everything and adored her, and even the hardiest students that were unwilling to learn learned in her classroom. Um, so I think that's worth mentioning because teachers are going to teach, and I'm here for it. So after about 12 years of this, she decides she's going to further her own education, and she spends, you guessed it, 1 year at the Clinton Liberal Institute in Clinton, New Jersey, in Clinton, New York. At which point, her and her friend moved to Bordentown, New Jersey, only to discover that there is no free public school there. So,
I
with the
feel
help of a
like
local school committee,
they could have figured that out prior.
like, I mean, they didn't Google it, you know? Like,
You're not wrong, but I feel like that should have been easier to understand before you just up and leave.
I that same thought went through my mind, but I was like, maybe they were just like touring the area and they thought Bordentown, New Jersey looked pretty. I'm unclear. So they get a local school committee together and they open one up. The first day of school, she's super disappointed to see that only 6 students show up on that day. But by the end of the school year, she had over 200 students,
That's some good growth.
right? The locals are so impressed that they spend $4,000, which today is $162,882.20 to build a new school.
That's a pretty cheap
She is,
deal.
I mean, right? She is shocked to learn that she will not be the principal because they have hired a man to do the job at twice her salary. She resigns, saying, quote, I may sometimes be willing to teach for nothing, but if paid at all, I shall never do a man's work for less than a man's pay. Mm.
Girl, yes.
Get it. So, this is about the time she moves and she's employed at the patent office in Washington, D.C. Here, from her office in the capital city, is where she'd be witness to the rising sectional conflicts that are being fiercely debated in Congress and amongst the representative politicians. So, this is the lead up to the Civil War.
Hmm.
And for her, it really sets in when she sees some of her former students among the frightened, angry, and hurt volunteer soldiers of the 19th Massachusetts. They had been attacked in Baltimore on their way to Washington in April 1861. She rushes to their aid in the makeshift hospital at the new U.S. Capitol building. She starts gathering food, medicine, clothes, anything she thought the soldiers might need. She also writes to her friends in Massachusetts, New York, and New Jersey to send more supplies to her in DC. She then spends the next weeks seeing both what the needs are, both supply and medical, and she wants to, quote, get to the front lines of a campaign where she might be able to make a difference with food, medical needs, and or nursing skills. So at
Wow.
this time, right? At this time, she goes home to her dad. It's 1862 and he's on his deathbed. She has plans, but she's scared and she wants to talk with him. So she tells him everything that she's thinking and then just blatantly asks, how can she go to a camp full of soldiers and still maintain her good reputation as a lady?
Mm.
Because she wants to help and she wants to be involved, but there's that little problem of her gender,
Yeah.
right? Because your ovaries will fall out if you help in the war.
It's,
Things like that.
it's hysteria. It's literally based off the same word we get hysterectomy from. It's uterus. Because we
Right.
have one, we're prone.
And we can't think without our ovaries. Well, her father, he is delighted that she wants to help out. And the emergencecivilwar.com site says, quote, enthused about his daughter's plans, Captain Barton reassured her, saying, I know soldiers, and they will respect you and your errand. He explained that in his experience, even the toughest soldiers showed respect to a woman with a good and kind reputation. Then, Captain Barton went a step beyond opinion and advice. He ordered his daughter to go and serve. Her duty would be to, quote, seek and comfort the afflicted everywhere. Further, he explained as the daughter of a patriot, she had to serve and sacrifice for her country in its peril and strengthen and comfort the brave men who stood for its defense.
Mm.
Could you imagine that conversation? Like, holy beans, my heart. he regaled her young little mind with these amazing stories of his time on the front lines. He
You know,
raises these kids to be true patriots, and then this is his like dying command.
I will say he also did something very interesting, right? Like you get somebody who feels a bit unsure of something, and then you have a father figure, an authority figure who literally is like, from now on, this is your mandate, this is your order. And
Yes.
it galvanizes something deep within you.
And
Like,
she leaves that conversation ready to go.
yeah,
So when you say galvanized, that is absolutely what happens. She's charged, she's gonna do the thing. So she does the next logical step and she writes a letter to the governor of Massachusetts because she's gonna do things by the book. Basically, she's asking for permission and an endorsement to go to General Burnside's army, which is currently in North Carolina, to care for the soldiers from Massachusetts who were either ill or wounded.
mm,
In the letter, she says, quote, I ask neither pay nor praise, simply a soldier's fare and the sanction to go and do with my might whatever my hands find to do. Of
I
that,
love it.
right? The governor, he's super on board. He is like, let's do the thing. But first, she has to go back to DC and kind of ends up creating another path forward to the front for her. My guess is the reason that that happens is because of the death of her father. It waylays her a bit. He dies March 21 of 1862. She writes to a relative in her devastation saying, quote, the old soldier's heavy march is ended. For him, the last tattoo is sounded, and resting upon the unfailing arms of truth, hope, and faith, he awaits the revival of the eternal morning. Mm. She called her dad the old soldier. Brought a little bit of a tear to my eye. However, she would gather herself and her courage and gain her official field duty at the Battle of Cedar Mountain in August of 62. In December of 1862, and this to me was so like I got smacked in the face with this information. The 21st Massachusetts Regiment was decimated at Fredericksburg, Virginia. The regimental standard bearer, Sir Thomas Plunkett, was still standing, supporting the flag with his body as both his arms had been blown off.
Oh,
He did this until another soldier could carry it forward into battle, right?
okay.
Clara, upon seeing this, nurses his wounds in the makeshift hospital and she stays with him, suturing and redressing what's remaining of his arms. They're basically stumps. On her 41st birthday, she sees him safely put into the train for evacuation and then on to Washington, D.C. At some point, Sergeant Plunkett comes into trouble trying to return to his Massachusetts home, so he can recover.
Yeah.
Clara pleads his case to the U.S. Senator Henry Wilson, who secures a furlough for him so that his full pay would continue until he gets his pension. Clara also sees that he has the service of an attendant to feed and care for him the remainder of his days. And I feel like that moment for her, seeing him the way that he was and doing what she did for him, really just kind of solidifies her life's goal. They will be cared for. At the end of the day, they will be cared for. However we can do it. And that's what she did.
Mm.
She sees other moments of war, September in Virginia. She's caring for the wounded during and after the Battle of Antietam. She's she goes all over the place. She's seen in Fredericksburg, Virginia again, Petersburg, Virginia, Andersonville, Georgia, which interestingly enough, total side note, my like 3 or 4 times great grandfather was a prisoner of war in Andersonville, Georgia.
Oh,
So it was such a fun little like crossover connection because as you say, and I will say it again, you said it perfectly the other day, our world doesn't exist in a vacuum.
hmm.
There are other things going on. So at the time she's there, mine is serving as a prisoner of war. She does all this saying, quote, "My business is staunching blood and feeding fainting men. Get it, girl." After the war, she starts receiving all sorts of letters asking if she'd cared for people's missing soldiers, their loved ones. Did she know where they wound up? Do you know where they went? Did they survive? Upon hearing this, Lincoln appoints her to lead the search for the missing men.
Whoa.
So rewind just a bit. This whole time that she's been um in these field hospitals and on these front lines in the Civil War, she's been maintaining her apartment back home in DC. And when the
How?
war ends, her I'm assuming she's sending her finances home
Oh, I thought you meant like,
to keep
and
paying.
then I'm making sure that that serviceman comes in and replaces the plumbing, and then I have a contractor coming in.
No. And then dinner will be on the table at 5. No, the apartment is still there. When the war ends, her home becomes the official office of this search for missing men. It lasts that way until 1868,
It's a bit of time.
right? So to promote this work to find these missing, and there's thousands of them, she goes on this extensive lecture tour all throughout the Northeast and parts of the Midwest. She captivates audiences. She gives them these vivid tales of her experience. She gives some 300 lectures before she loses her voice in a speech in 1868. 300.
Mm.
So she is going to bring these boys home. To boot that, she submits a report to Congress, including the numbers of inquiries received. They're printed, they go to Congress, and a letter written and sent along with it to kind of like her receipts. Like, this is what we need the money for. Congress approves $15,000 back then, which I didn't do the math for that, and I probably should have.
It sounds massive.
But
It sounds massive.
it's massive, right? I mean, if 4,000 translates to 162,000, we can see where we're going. So they're reimbursing her work. Her searches conclude at the end of 1866 with over 22,000 men having been identified,
Wow.
right? That was wild to me. But anyway, so she loses her voice. The doctor tells her to go get rest. She does this in Europe. While she's in Europe, because, doctor's orders.
I mean, there's only one place to get to get rest, and it's Europe. It's
I mean,
Europe.
truly, right? The Mediterranean, you need that good sea air.
Right. You know, maybe my
Yeah.
answer isn't found in the south of France, but we should look there anyhow.
We should look there first and probably longest, I think.
Yes.
I'm just guessing. So while in Europe, she's contacted by some officials. They want to talk to her about everything she's done. They're so impressed with her wartime nursing and relief work, and they have questions for her because that little thing, the Treaty of Geneva, like they they want to know. They want to work with her, they want to have conversations, they want to see what she's about, and she is on board. She immediately gets to work in Strasbourg during the Franco-Prussian War. She's giving residents of the besieged city work and relief. And this is where, after working with this international community, she heads back home in 1873 and spends 8 years of hard work trying to convince the American people. And she becomes the founder of the American Red Cross, which is just like, I never thought about it before. I didn't think about the International Red Cross because I guess I'm an American through and through in moments, and I just always assumed it was the American Red Cross doing international work. Um, but it wasn't. They were there first, and she's the reason we have it here. And for them, internationally, their goal is to provide essential civilian disaster relief as well as wartime aid. And so this is kind of her skill set, right? So
Yeah.
she brings it home, she gets it going, she spends the remainder of her life dutifully working at this and being kind of the most exactly what you would picture. I mean, nothing was spent without gain and nothing was wasted. I mean, she even lived like near the facility to maintain the facilities and things like that that they used. Clara Barton, the angel field of the battlefield, passed away on April 12th, 1912, at her home in Glen Echo, Maryland, at the age of 90.
Wow.
And I honestly think that so much of her life was because of those early years listening to her dad. So
Oh,
that is
yeah.
my Father's Day tribute to the American Red Cross. And I did not include pictures, but they are very easy to come across. So I do
Well,
apologize.
neato. I mean, and to be fair,
Yeah,
I feel like I know what she looks like.
I think she kind of looks exactly like you would imagine her to.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't already know what she looks like, I think it's pretty yeah. So that's it. That's
Well,
my
neat.
my Captain Stephen Barton and his daughter Clara in the American Red Cross.
Well, I have a story for you, and I would bet dollars to donuts you don't know this human's name.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you the story of Natalie Clifford Barney.
Okay.
So my
Off the top,
sources,
I'm gonna say I don't know her name.
that's fair. Fascinate.com. The article is titled Bold Facts About Natalie Clifford Barney, the aristocratic scandal maker. Headstuff.org has another one, Natalie Clifford Barney, Queen of Paris Lesbians by Ciaran Conliffe.
I feel like that is an incredible title
Mhm.
and very big shoes to fill.
Well, let's see if I can do it.
Because right now, the image that I already have, good luck.
Yep. So Natalie Clifford Barney is born on Halloween, 1876.
Already things are going great for her.
Yeah. Her dad is a man named Albert Clifford Barney. He's the president of the Barney Railway Foundry Company. And as soon as I read that line, all I could think of was Carol from Archer, who is like the heiress to a rail fortune.
I have never actually watched a full episode of Archer.
And
I
this
know.
episode is all done because Angie is going to go watch some TV. It's incredible. You need to watch. But anyhow, so I was already thinking of Natalie in this very interesting way. And if people know who Carol is, they'll understand what I'm talking about. Now, Albert Clifford Barney, he's one of the wealthiest dudes in Dayton, Ohio, where they're born or where she's born. And her and her younger sister, Laura, they live what you'd imagine. They have a very privileged upbringing. It's marked by boarding schools, writing lessons, summers abroad, recuperating
Oh,
in Europe, if you will, just to do a callback.
debutantes.
I don't hear the word debutante in this story, but I'll let you extrapolate where you will. When she's
Okay.
5 years old, um, Natalie has a chance encounter with Oscar Wilde.
Because we vacation in right, okay. Okay.
Well, he was Oscar Wilde at this point. He's doing a little speaking tour throughout America, and 5-year-old Natalie runs into this dude in the hotel in Long Beach, New York, where her family's on vacation. And a while later, while this is not anything important to Natalie because she's 5 and this is just some dude she ran into, um, this encounter changes her mother's life and trajectory because Wilde invites Natalie and mom to join him for dinner, like you do. And so, of course, they're not going to turn down Oscar Wilde. And it's by the end of the evening, he's convinced Alice Pike Barney to pursue her passion for painting.
Okay.
Now,
Good
this
on him.
is this is against hubby's wishes because Hubs doesn't think she should have a
This checks.
career. This is what by this point, the early 1890s, so still Victorian. She has one job,
Hey
and that's to
now,
be the
okay.
angel of the household.
Okay, yeah.
And so she does this anyhow, and she becomes one of America's pioneering female artists,
Get
which
on it.
is pretty damn good. Now, at age 10, Natalie travels to Fontainebleau, France, and she attends the prestigious feminist Les Rouges Girls' School. And while she's there, she falls in love with French literature and language.
As you do.
But during vacation, she doesn't just sit around and read. She's causing stirs because she's doing things like refusing to ride her horse side saddle.
Oh
And
my gosh.
the news of this hits the local papers.
Allow me to clutch my pearls.
Young girl straddles a horse. Like, I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that just sounds so bizarre.
Stupid.
Yeah.
That's as bizarre as hearing he fell in a barn raising accident
I
to our
mean,
brains.
yeah, it's just so out of step with what we understand. Now, there is one person in her neck of the woods that seems to understand our girl, Clifford Barney. And her name is Evelina Palmer, and she's the stepdaughter of a wealthy New York surgeon named Robert Abe. Now, like Natalie, Eva loved poetry and writing. She's also incredibly drop dead gorgeous. She has red hair that goes all the way to her ankles.
Oh, wow.
Incredibly pale skin, and she looked, like Natalie said, a medieval virgin.
Yeah,
So,
that's kind of the image I had.
yeah,
I thought a
Natalie,
Waterhouse painting in my brain.
and you just imagine because of course she has a belt with a sword on it over her dress, and, like the long
Yeah,
tunic
she's
style.
French. Well, I mean,
Exactly.
she's
This
in
is,
France.
well,
Yeah.
she is in France, but she's a New York surgeon. But anyhow, Natalie becomes head over heels for Eva Palmer, and the girls strike up what is considered a scandalous romance. Again, this is still Victorian era, so this is very interesting to me. Now, Natalie Clifford Barney knew by the time of 12 that she's a lesbian, and she vowed to not spend one day of her life hiding it or apologizing for it, which
Okay, so to me, I
hyper
feel like
progressive.
that chance encounter with Oscar Wilde really did some things for her.
Yeah, and it's hard to understand how one encounter with Oscar Wilde could impart things to a 5-year-old that could be long lasting.
Except for the fact that he told her mother to paint and she did.
And I wonder if her mom was like, the only reason why I'm a successful painter is because that man just goes around and does what he wants with men. So maybe, but you know what? Maybe, I take it back. Perhaps you're onto something. Now, Clifford Barney, she compares sexuality to albinism, saying, "My queerness is not a vice, it's not deliberate, and it harms no one."
And this is 1890.
Yeah, well, I mean, around there, right? Because, she's 12, she's born in 76. So that would
Okay.
be 80. Yeah, just shy of that. So yeah. Um, her homosexuality or la la la, her homosexuality could and would cause scandals in the segments of society that we imagine, right? And she feels that any negative responses that she receives about her sexuality is more than worth it. Not only was she free to be herself in public, she also found that her status as a well known lesbian was, quote, useful for getting rid of nuisances, namely the romantically
Men.
motivated young men,
Okay.
which I really appreciate, considering that I have had back before I was married men try to hit on me and I would only speak to them in Japanese.
Do what you gotta do.
It was hilarious watching their brains melt because it just didn't match what they thought was going to happen.
I told my coworker that as we meet new coworkers, I'm going to refuse to actually speak to them, so I will be doing sign language until we know they're actually, you know.
I love this for you. And considering that my sign language skills include phrases, they're limited, like turtle, pretty, hungry, and then fuck around and find out.
Same, but my new coworkers don't know that.
I love this. Oh, I learned the word petty recently.
That checks.
Yeah, so petty.
I
Anyhow,
love this.
yes. Um, 1896, Clifford Barney's mom, Alice, the painter, she moves back to France, and it's because the youngest daughter, Laura, is needing medical treatment. And
Again, the south of France.
oh man, Natalie tags along, but she sets up her own household. Rich people problems.
Which wallpaper do we pick?
Yeah, it's like, you know what? You do what you're gonna do, Mom. I got this Shields green asbestos laden paper that I'm gonna hang up in my house, but it'll be fine. It'll be
In
fine
every room.
in every room. Um, she publishes her first book of poems in the year 1900, and Natalie's writing is always going to be the thing that gets everybody talking. But in this particular publication, she has a very awkward mom daughter interaction, and Clifford Barney's mother contributed illustrations to Natalie's racy poetry without registering the book's lesbian subtext. So mom did all the drawings and didn't pick up on the things.
Even though daughter's been living out in her life this whole time.
Yeah, apparently, like she just in one ear out the other. Like the times when you have conversations with your mom, you're like, I told mom, I told you.
I love him.
You literally drew the pictures for this thing. How did you miss this?
This checks.
But I told you the critics, they picked up on it just right off the bat. And her conservative father, Mr. I don't want my wife to work because I'm a man. He's got some thoughts and feelings about his daughter's poetry. Up until this point, he's barely tolerated her sexuality at the best of times. And so this is too much. This is way too much because now we've got receipts and everybody at the country club knows and has read and is passing the book around with their own highlighted portions.
And weird enough, the young men aren't calling anymore, but you have 13 lady suitors outside.
Yeah, you know. Um Now, so he does the most logical thing. He travels to France and he buys all of the copies that are available that he can get his hands on. And he even buys the like plates used to print the book, destroys them all.
Wow.
He's got thoughts and feelings.
That is the biggest money can solve all your problems flex I've ever seen.
I mean, yeah. It doesn't do everything, right? Because she continues to publish, but she does it under a pen name.
Good for her.
Yeah. Now
The
she,
name de plume.
yeah, I mean, it's not too long that she has to do this though, because it's in 1902, so 2 years later, that she receives her share of her late father's estate, and it's a significant chunk of money that she can live in comfort for the rest of her life.
Nice.
Now, her first order of business, she's going to relocate to Paris and she's going to hook up with Eva. Remember the medieval virgin looking woman?
Hmm.
They get a small apartment in Rue Chalgrin, which is not how you say it. I'm nearly 100% on that, but it is what I just said. So moving right along.
It's okay. My girl's name's not Claire, it's Clara.
You got much closer, right? I mean, here I am doing to the French language what I would do with a basic sewing project, just make a complete and utter mockery of it.
We're sorry, France.
Yeah. Now, the Parisian culture apparently is, even though it's like very early 1900s, they're extremely tolerant of Clifford Barney's sexuality. They're allowing her to pursue romantic partners more enthusiastically. So she had no qualms prior. Now she's just out there willy-nilly. It's not long after arriving in Paris that she begins a very public relationship with a very famous courtesan and Parisian party girl named Liane de Pougy.
Okay, she sounds adorable.
doesn't she? Um, and it was just like, wait a minute, what happens to Eva? I thought we were with Eva. I thought we had
Yeah, I
the
thought that's why we
thing.
went to Paris.
Well, Clifford Barney first spots
The
Depugi at a
wallpaper
Paris.
got Eva, didn't it?
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I mean, because Eva's not really mentioned, but I mean, she's kind of mentioned a little bit later in a weird way. But anyhow,
Okay.
so she spots Depugi at a Paris nightclub, and later that evening, she shows up at Depugi's door. This has got to be the most crazy thing, and the thing that I think inspires modern prom requests. Proposal like
Promposals?
prom. Is that the thing? Promposals? Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Anyhow, because she shows up dressed as a page boy. She claims to be a messenger of love sent by the poet Sappho. Do you know who
Oh,
Sappho
okay.
is?
Yeah. The
Okay.
reason we have the term sapphic love.
Yes. So Depugi is impressed by Clifford Barney's audacity, maybe her cosplay as well, unsure. And she invites Clifford Barney in for the evening. So, 1900s Netflix and chill. Now, the romance between Natalie Clifford Barney and Leanne Depugi doesn't last long. Clifford Barney insisted on rescuing Depugi from her career as a courtesan, and this career is something that she's just not willing to give up. She's in it. She's a career
To
girl.
win it.
Yeah, like, look,
She
this,
puts diamonds in the champagne. Gonna win it.
yes. So very
Just
Moulin Rouge
saying.
vibes as far as I'm sure. Like this is just what it's serving. Now, both sides, they dig in their heels. They are very adamant about what should happen here. But they decide to go their separate ways. And this is an amicable split. And it doesn't take long for Natalie to strike up another romance. Now, apparently, Natalie has this incredible habit of keeping all of her ex-lovers as friends in her life. So as far as I know, Eva is either, like a good friend or she is still actively being a lover because
Okay.
while she doesn't struggle to keep her friends or her exes as her friends, she does struggle with monogamy. I don't know if struggle is
This
the right
checks.
word. I feel like the right word is outright despises the concept of monogamy.
Okay.
Now, ironically, that, even though we think of Clifford Barney of having these literary aspirations of having written several publications by now, it's a fictionalized account of her relationship with Depugi, written by Depugi, that becomes a bestseller.
Oh, okay.
So, Idle Safik is reprinted in more than 60 times within its first year alone. And meanwhile, as all this is happening and this version of her life is out in the public eye, Clifford Barney's own version of the story fails to even find a publisher.
Oh,
But it's
devastated for her.
it's got to be tough, right? Like if the opposing studio already takes a very similar sounding movie to market, you're not going to get the same audience to go see both an ant story
Yeah.
and a bug's life. Or what was the, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know
You
exactly
you
what
know what
you're
I'm talking
talking
about? Yeah,
about.
because you're gonna it's like, how did both movies make cartoons about ants in the same summer? It's bizarre to
Yeah.
me.
I think the other one was
Bizarre to me.
called Ants.
Oh, I think you're right. Okay. Yeah. Now Clifford Barney soon found a more permanent partner in the beautiful English poet Renee Vivian.
Ooh.
Vivian considered Clifford Barney to be her muse, while Clifford Barney wrote one of her best poems, Je me souviens, I remember, for Vivian. They each push each other intellectually and they find common ground in symbolism, Sappho, and feminist theory. Now, I found Natalie Clifford Barney because of a meme about Renee Vivian. Renee Vivian published one of her books or one of her poems, a book of poems, something in that vein. But she did it without having her name attached to it. And she attends a lecture about this man talking about how this book is the pinnacle of love, particularly the love that a man would say and express about his female lover.
Okay.
And as she's listening to this, she busts out laughing and laughs so hard she excuses herself from the lecture.
Because she wrote it.
She wrote it, and he's talking about just how incredible it is and how only a man could write like this and this, that, and the other. And she's like, you
Mm-hmm.
numbskull. And like, I wanted to learn so much about her. I need to learn French to be able to do so, apparently,
This checks.
because she apparently just didn't quite make it into the English circles as far as, bibliographies. But these are things. Now, together, Natalie Clifford Barney and Renee Vivian, they have this incredible, eccentric artist lifestyle. They they do the logical thing. They decide that they're going to teach themselves Greek for fun,
Mm-hmm.
and you can only do that by moving to the island of Lesbos, where their hero Sappho lived.
This
It's
checks.
it's the only logical thing to do. And as they're like building this early relationship, they're dreaming about doing the next logical step, which is opening a school of poetry for women, just like Sappho had 2,500 years just prior.
Again,
Small problem. They have a fairly,
ovaries.
no, I was gonna say toxic
Oh,
relationship.
oh,
I mean,
okay.
because again, Natalie Clifford Barney doesn't understand the word monogamous in application towards her. Like this is a bizarre
Mm-hmm.
concept. Um, and I, Renee Vivian, she's got thoughts and feelings on the subject.
Mm-hmm.
Once, while trying to win back Renee Vivian, Barney got an opera singer to perform directly under her girlfriend's window. She's planning, because I mean she's dressed up as a page boy before. This was a little bit more grandiose. She planned to get Renee to pop her head out so that Clifford Barney could give her flowers and a poem. I mean, I get it. That sounds like fairly decent. Instead, she doesn't pop her head out. She sends her governess to return Natalie's gifts and like tells her to kick rocks.
Okay.
But the opera singer, that's a maybe that is a high fidelity callback.
I was just thinking the boombox.
Yeah. Hmm. So
Yeah.
so maybe this is where, John Cusack really got the concept. Now, Natalie Clifford Barney, she you can kind of understand there's going to be a theme that pops up because if we look at her relationship with Leon de Pugy, um, it has the same problem that we see with Renee Vivian. Vivian demands absolute fidelity. And Clifford Barney, she's like, it's kind of boring. And why? And so they have
Have you
this,
seen this?
yeah, like, she winked at me. So I said, let's go. Um, it's good enough. Well, they on again, off again, on again, off again. So it very tumultuous, right?
I really want to
They,
see DePoogie and Vivian get together.
I mean, that would be the most incredible meet cute. Now, they do eventually break it off completely in 1905. And this, if you had to guess, who do you think would break up with who?
In theory, it would make sense for Vivian to do the breaking up because she hasn't been great at monogamy, but I
Mm.
have a feeling it went the other way.
Actually, you're right. But maybe for the wrong reasons, because they're chilling in Lesbos when Renee receives a letter from an ex-girlfriend who is also a baroness.
Oh,
And she feels bad, right? The relationship ended, kind of abruptly, maybe not in the way that the Baroness was prepared for. I, I'm gonna go give her some closure. I'm gonna go. We're gonna have a final talk. Just end it.
we have a FaceTime about it.
Yeah. So a denouement. Well, she goes there and the trip doesn't go according to plan. Renee ends up getting back together with the Baroness and dumps Natalie Clifford Barney. Just think of it like via text, but the Edwardian version or equivalent or whatever that would be.
So it went the other direction.
Yeah, it was
She
just
broke up
like,
with her not because she couldn't be monogamous, but because she couldn't be monogamous.
well, not with
Or she could
Natalie.
be with the Baroness.
Right. So Clifford Barney, she decides that the only way to get over somebody is to get it under somebody else, multiple somebody else's. And her partners include the novelist Colette, the polymath Lucy de la Rue Madras, and the infamous socialite Dolly Wilde. I don't know why I kept the word infamous in there because I don't know who Dolly Wilde is unless she is somehow related to our buddy Oscar.
Keep talking.
I mean, I'll just hold out. Like I can edit dead air out.
Let's see. Dorothy Irene Wilde, known as Dolly Wilde, born July 11th, 1895, died April 1941, was an English socialite made famous by her connection and her reputation as a witty conversationalist. Um, Her uncle is Oscar Wilde.
Oh, okay. So
So there you go. Thanks, Google.
good for her. Now, it's through these romances, or though these romances, they don't last long, she continues to add them to her stable of friends, and she remains close with many of these women. Now, as she's busy sleeping her way through Paris, her ex, Renee Vivian, is going through her darkest hours. She's self-medicating, and looking back, we can kind of recognize, what she's struggling with is anorexia. And Vivian's masochistic tendencies reach destructive levels, and that ultimately is what ends her life. After Vivian passes of an overdose at 28 years old, Clifford Barney is grief stricken and funds a poetry award to honor her former lover,
Mm, okay.
which I find very adorable. I mean, it's a bummer, but it is a very it's mourning in a
It's an
beautiful way.
yeah, that's beautiful.
So Clifford Barney, after Vivian's passing, seems to find solace in her writing, and it kind of helps her cope. But the critics they don't seem to really admire what she's kicking out, and they hate her plays. They're criticizing them. They refuse to accept the scripts. Like it's bad. And so Clifford Barney ends up staging them for her friends in her backyard of her home. Now her landlord kind of
I
hates
love
this.
this.
Yeah, her landlord doesn't like this idea. He thinks the plays are too close or they follow nature too closely, which apparently was coded language for obviously about lesbians, which
Okay.
I don't understand followed nature too closely as a euphemism. Unless there's more information about women in community that I don't understand.
I feel like that would I I guess the question would be what does he mean by nature?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, okay. Because
So
anyway, carry on.
he's like, no more of these plays. They are a sin to my eyes, my ears, the neighborhood.
And she's like, I'll just buy the place then so I can keep having my place.
She's like, I'm just gonna end my lease. I'm gonna go somewhere else. So as she's going on this house hunt, she brings a new friend, Elizabeth de Gramont, the Duchess of Clermont-Tonnerre. And she's a well-known memoirist or memoirist. That's the word I was looking for. And de Guermantes is part of the aristocratic line that included Henry IV of France. So she's no slouch, right?
Okay.
It is despite her royal pedigree, de Guermantes was an outspoken socialist. And so she gets a really, really fun nickname. They call her the Red Duchess.
Well, I love that for her.
I know. Um, so they first start seeing each other. Their romance immediately fascinates the city that they're living in, right? And de Guermont is married to a man named Philip Burton. She's also mother of two. But despite these rough circumstances, those two relationship is something that sticks with her for the rest of de Guermont's life.
Okay.
So kind of interesting to hear that this was a bit sticky and, but it just worked. Now, 1909, Clifford Barney moves into her home on 20 Rue Jacob. And for the next 60 years, that home serves as the venue for her legendary Friday afternoon salons, which is where Europe's best and brightest come and they discuss politics, art, music, literature, everything. But if they're going to discuss politics, they really want to hash out the pacifist sides. Her guests include T.S. Eliot, F. Scott Fitzgerald, James Joyce. Ezra Pound meets his mistress, Olga Rouge, there. And have you ever heard of the dancer turned spy, Mata Hari?
Hmm.
She shows up there at some point as well. Um, Many of her guests are men, but she uses this salon to promote women's art and ideas. Now,
Okay.
because she has more money than most people will ever see in their
Sense.
life, yeah, she conducts many of the salon in a 19th century reproduction of a Greek temple in the woods behind her house.
I
And
love
she
that.
dubs this building the Temple of Friendship.
Hmm.
So she's an eccentric, but we're here for it.
Yeah, live your life.
It's around this time that an American portrait artist named Romaine Brooks begins showing up at Clifford Barney's salon. The first name Romaine, what are your thoughts about it?
Outside of the salad?
Yeah.
Okay. I was initially imagining a kind of Hispanic looking fellow, but since I don't know if it's a male or female, and then my next thought went to this absolutely drop dead gorgeous um lady painter with paint sticks in her hair.
Mm. It is a woman because these two immediately hit it off. And Brooks painted Clifford Barney along with many of the others in their circle. And of course, they fall in love. Now, Brooks doesn't mind that Clifford Barney has other lovers. And in fact, she becomes Clifford Barney's longest, most stable relationship.
Hmm.
But the Duchess, maybe not so happy about this whole arrangement.
Oh, I
Elizabeth,
forgot about the Duchess.
the Red Duchess, she is less enthusiastic about Brooks's intrusion, but she nevertheless accepts that Clifford Barney's non-monogamous and there's just now an extra person. So she made sure to invite Brooks to all the parties, all the travel plans, and in time, this little love triangle becomes more comfortable and basically turns into a polyamorous triad.
Okay.
Now, partly to kind of make Gromont relax and feel a bit more secure in her relationship, Clifford Barney drew up a contract which read, "No one union shall be as strong as this union, no others joining so tender, no relationship so lasting." And so it's not an official marriage contract, but it's a big step when you think about how adverse to commitment that Natalie has been just nonstop.
Like up to this point? Yeah.
Yeah, and so the Duchess hangs around. Now, they continue to travel as they do this, and they kind of do it in a way that is very interesting to me. And when they decide to, kind of put down roots, they build a home referred to as the hyphenated house, which ends up being like an incredible thing that has two separate wings that's joined only by a dining room. So that
Okay.
each woman can share Natalie with impunity, and then they just come together for dinner.
Okay.
Now, the home ensured that Brooks had her privacy until World War II when it was destroyed in an air raid. Now, We have uh, Clifford Barney's portrait that was done by Brooks in 1920. And in her artwork, Clifford Barney, and I'll show it to you in a bit, appears in her Rue Jacob salon. She's cloaked in a gray fur coat. And Brooks tends to include these small animals in her portraits that are meant to symbolize the subject. For Clifford Barney, Brooks painted a small black horse, and it was a nod to Clifford Barney's nickname, which was the Amazon.
I love that.
Now,
Okay.
um, as all of this is going on, when people are thinking about Clifford Barney's, life and everything that she's done, and we hear like her biographies and everything that comes out is more focused on her relationships rather than her literature. And even the earliest one, which was titled, did I put the title in here? Oh yes, there it is. Portrait of a Seductress. It has very little to do with her writing career. And that's a big bummer. But then we hit some problematic parts because history doesn't happen in a vacuum. And we've gone all the way from Edwardian breakups to 1940 when the Germans invade France. And
Hmm.
it's bizarre for me to think of one person living through all of this, but I recognize that time flows in a linear fashion.
I don't. I
Now,
refuse to recognize that it flows in a linear fashion.
it's more fun like that. But Clifford
Hmm.
Barney, she abandons Paris and relocates to Italy because that felt safer. Now, when she's living in a Jewish quarter, she feared what would happen if the Germans sent her to a concentration camp. And so she panics, and her sister sends her an official document about how she's a confirmed Christian. And she's really banking on this piece of paper to save her. Um, and while that could be viewed with disdain, it gets worse because she is Jewish. And to further cover her bacon, she publishes several anti Semitic statements. And in a memoir that she never publishes, she praises the Axis forces and attempted to portray Hitler in a positive light. Now, it's unclear as to if she really genuinely supported the Germans. Some scholars believe that. It could have been that she literally was just trying to stay alive, and that seemed to be a tool at her disposal. Hard to say, because
Okay.
I would assume, like some others, that she's terrified.
I mean, that would check.
Yeah. But even though, regardless of where you stand on her intentions and her thought process, she does help some of her Jewish friends escape from Europe and find refuge in the US. Now,
Excellent.
by the end of the war, she is a firm Allied supporter and has nothing good to say about the Axis. But her complicated and inconsistent stance in World War II is not uncommon of members in her aristocratic circle. I mean, you think about the British king who steps down. I mean,
Yeah.
he's got some very interesting things that he says.
Yeah, I mean, well, when you just think about their situation in general, I think it is a matter of trying to save one's status and one's own bacon when when they see fit, you know?
Yeah. It's like I'll worry about my legacy later, but first let's worry about the life.
Yeah.
But so at the end of the war, Clifford Barney returns back to France. Um, Brooks, her lover, stays in Italy, and that puts some distance on the relationship, right? Well, it's about this time that Clifford Barney starts seeing a married woman named Janine Lahovery. Now, while this couple remains committed to each other, they do travel back and forth a lot. And Clifford Barney is working very hard to preserve Romaine Brooks's reputation in the artistic community. And she writes a memoir about Brooks and tries to find galleries to display her lover's paintings. Brooks is having a tough go. She becomes a depressed recluse in Italy and soon just continues to devolve. she starts refusing to see the doctors that Clifford Barney is sending to help her. And Clifford Barney is really struggling. And in a last ditch effort to salvage her relationship, um,
What happened to the other half of the household? Where are they?
oh, you're talking about the Duchess?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's not brought up.
Okay.
It's not brought up. Sorry. But so
No worries.
she's really trying to save her relationship with Brooks. It's not really working. Eventually they kind of break up. Um, Now Brooks apparently is still smarting over the relationship that she's got with Janine Lahovery. But soon enough, she just stops returning Clifford Barney's letters. And it's until like by 1970, it's clear the relationship is kaput. It's over. But they'd been together
By
for more than 50
1970,
years. 70. They were
that is
together 50 years.
insane. That is insane.
By this time, most of Clifford Barney's contemporaries, they've already passed on, and later generations don't know of her work. Though Natalie was once the center of Paris's feminist and artistic circles, she spent her final days in obscurity, and at 95 years old, Clifford Barney simply outlived her time and finally faded away. Now, I have some
Wow.
fun pictures for you.
Yay, I'm so excited.
That is a painting of Natalie, age 10, and
I
becomes one of
love
her
it.
favorite things.
Okay, so she kind of has this Robin Hood vibe. Incredibly curly, beautiful, long blondish hair goes down to the middle of her back, but she's got a green velvet cloak on and it's hooded.
Hmm.
And I'm gonna assume that's some type of yellow silk. The sleeves and the rest of the garment are made out of, but the
Could
chest
easily be.
piece and the hood are definitely green crushed velvet. It's beautiful.
Then remember me telling you about the painting that Brooks painted of her?
Oh, okay. She's definitely got the fur stool on. She's got the boots with the fur. There is a small black Arabian looking horse. Um, she's got like the finger curls.
Hmm.
I imagine is she wearing a hat?
I believe so. It's, I don't know if I have the full painting or if it was cropped,
Oh
but it
yeah, okay, it was
does look
cropped right
like
there, so
it.
we can't tell.
Yeah.
It appears to be there's snow on the ground behind her as well. That's a really beautiful painting.
But that is the story of Natalie Clifford Barney.
She had a life.
Yeah.
Holy beans. That is wow. Dang, girl. That's a life
Hmm.
right there. You're right. Time happens in a straight line, but nope. That to see everything that she saw
Yeah.
is wild. Yeah.
Like that would be what? The Wright brothers and the moon landing?
Yeah. Both World Wars
Yeah.
and the Cold War.
Cold War started. Well, yeah. No, you're right. I was thinking the end.
Yeah. That is insane. Thank you for that.
Hmm.
I love that. That's fun.
So
And
if,
again, the world does not happen in a vacuum.
no, no, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
If you've enjoyed this merry jaunt through history and you're wondering, oh my gosh, what the hell are they going to bring next week? The truth is, we don't know. We haven't even started researching it yet. We probably have a list of story ideas that we're trying to get through, but it just keeps getting longer. And the one story we
Like
thought
you
we
to
were,
be read.
yeah, yeah, dang it. Well, if you're thinking you can't wait, rate, review, subscribe. Those are the things that help us meet more people like you. And on that note, goodbye.
Bye-bye. where that came from.
I have that effect on people.
Just they need to hack up a lung about it.
Yeah, it's honest work.